morning and happy Friday. Thank you so much for being here today. So before we start, I'd like you all to please put your cell phones on silent or vibrate, or step into the hallway if you need to take a call. Because this is filmed for broadcast, this will be available on GRA TV's YouTube channel later on. It is not live. Welcome to the Little Falls Chamber of Commerce and Tourism sponsored legislative update. My name is Purva, and I'm the President and CEO of the Little Falls Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism. Thank you to Senator Wiesenberg, Rep. Krisha, Rep. Schultz, and Rep. Wiener for being with us today. We will start today with hearing from our representatives. After that, we will open up the floor for some questions and comments from the audience. I ask that the speakers organize their thoughts and do not, and who wishes to address issues, the time to do so. Please limit your remarks to the issues that pertain to the state government. We would like to remind the public that the views expressed during this session are those of the individual making the comments and not those of the Little Falls Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism. We will start with hearing from all our guests.
Can we start with the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I guess I got the microphone. I'll introduce myself. I am first-time legislator, State Representative Mike Wiener. Live over south of Long Prairie on basically the farm that I grew up on. Like I said, first-time legislator, a lot to learn. A lot of stuff going on. I own a small business over there. We produce animal bedding and biomass. So I say I'm a business owner that dabbles in politics. And raise a family. My wife and I have 9 kids together. And that was part of the reason I got involved, is because what am I going to leave my kids? What am I going to leave my grandkids? I see a change in our world, in our politics, and I want to make sure that they have the same opportunities when they get older that I had when I was growing up. I think we live in a truly unique area of the state. We've got good people, a lot of good qualities, and I want them at some point in time to start their families in our area as well. I want them to grow and maintain this area. But I need to work to make sure that they can do that they're not taxed off of their property, that the education is good. So these are all reasons that I got involved, and I say I got 9 good reasons to keep fighting for them. So thank you. Thanks for putting this on. Thanks for having me here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nate Wiesenberg, Senator here in District 10. I got involved too to fight for my kids. I never thought I'd be running for a senator or any representative or anything like that, but here I am, and I'm worried about the future for our kids and everyone's future. So there's things we're fighting for down there that would blow your mind when you think about it, and it's every day. And I was just going to give a little bit of an update on some things we've been going through real quick. I'm not going to go through a lot, and we'll get through this. You guys can answer questions. But, I'm on a labor committee, ed policy, environmental. We had a bill come through where they're trying to make it illegal to buy more than a gallon of paint unless you have a license. So those are some crazy things we're dealing with. Or paint your house or paint your barn. Ed policy is just backwards. We were talking about teaching kids how to have sex on Monday, and I asked, well, what about abstinence? And one person shook their head no, and then they responded, and Mike Wiener said this was on the radio this morning in the cities. They were actually talking about how she said we can't teach abstinence. We should be teaching our kids how to have sex and not when to tell them. So she said kids can have sex whenever they want, and we shouldn't be teaching this. It's actually codified in state law. The only thing we can be teaching in school is abstinence. So that's one thing we're fighting in ed policy right now. It's crazy. I'm also in environment. Lots of things going on there. There's an attack on farmers right now, though. So if you're a farmer, you got to be aware. Reach out to me. Reach out to Department of Ag. Reach out to somebody. They're using nitrates as a boogeyman. The nitrates aren't as bad as they're saying. I've got scientific evidence. If you want to see it, we can get off here and do all those kinds of things. But, you know, we got to live, we got to survive. You know, there's things we can accomplish, and there's some things that are, you know, down the road, maybe we can get there, but we're not there yet. But yeah, so I'm just here to represent you and hear your voices. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm State Representative Isaac Schultz, and it's awesome to see you all. Thank you so much for coming out. Let's just start there. This is an excellent crowd on a Friday morning, so great to have you all with us. I represent essentially the southern half of Morrison County, and I'm hoping there are some more folks from the rest of rural Benton County as well who've joined us today. And so I represent District 10B. I live between Uppsala and Swanville. My family's been here for 5 generations, and I'm just excited to represent you all because we already have the best place to live in all of Minnesota. And we do have some challenges right now. There's no doubt about the direction of the state. And we have to change course and ensure that all of our voices in this room get represented in St. Paul by ensuring that we change course from the radical Democrat agenda that we've seen over the last year, and that we focus upon the things that are going to make life more affordable and the things that will enhance our quality of life in Minnesota. So for me, I sit on 3 committees right now. I sit on the Commerce Committee, I sit on the Labor and Industry Committee, and the Sustainable Infrastructure Committee. Last year, many of you were in the room, and you were here as we kind of provided the update with regards to where Democrats were going to take this state under their full, irresponsible DFL trifecta. And at that time, I said to you that I was worried about a 23% budget increase to the state budget, which would have been unsustainable at its face. And at the end of the day, when we gathered here in June of last year, the result was a 36.5% increase in state spending and $10 billion worth of new taxes. Unsurprisingly, even the $10 billion of new tax increases aren't enough for this Democrat budget into the future. And we are already projecting a deficit as near as next year. And so they spent the entirety of the budget surplus and added $10 billion worth of taxes and fees on each and every one of us. And we're starting to feel that now. You know, 2023, that hadn't fully come into effect, but now as you renew your license tabs or your driver's license, you're going to see the increases in that. You know, I've talked about my Chevy Impala that I drive around and have over 200,000 miles on it. And just the tab fee increase on that alone is an additional $85. And right now, under the crazy inflation that we are experiencing at the grocery store, at the gas pump, and in our energy costs, our focus has to be on affordability, and that remains my priority. In addition to that, we need to ensure that we stop the new mandates on our schools. Many of you, and I hope many of you are participating in your school boards, working with your superintendents, and having good conversations because, and I'm sure Representative Krisha is going to talk about this, but our schools, our rural schools are being devastated by the fact that they passed all these new mandates which couldn't be covered by the amount of money that was sent to education. For me, this session, I'm trying to limit the bad. Under complete Democrat control, there is so much that could that could strip away our constitutional rights, and that could increase our cost of living. But beyond that, there's a few key things that I'm really seeking to accomplish. That's delisting the gray wolf in Minnesota and getting us to a place where we're managing it here in Minnesota so that we can also have a wolf hunt. And then we also have to be concerned about what's happening with the crisis at our southern border and the impacts for Minnesota. So they're trying to make this a sanctuary state. Let's call it what it is. And let's point that out and talk about the impacts to our communities. In the city, in and around the community of Rice, just a few weeks ago, as was posted in the Sauk Rapids Rice Herald, there was fentanyl that traveled directly from the southern border right up to our community, and it ended up in our school. This is the damage from the uncontrolled border because of Joe Biden. And we have to call it what it is, and we have to change course. So those are a few things to keep our community safe that we really need to be focused upon this year. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thank you, Representative Wiener, Senator Wiesenberg, and Representative Schultz. So I'll try not to duplicate what they've already done and just follow up. So, and thank you all for being here. Nice crowd. So a couple of things you've heard. We in the House we're up over 4,000 bills introduced. We have a structural imbalance in the budget. We spent $19 billion was sent out in a lot of ongoing and one-time funding, and that has created imbalance going into the out years. So we have a surplus of 3.7 in the February forecast that the Minnesota Budget Office has already looked at and said that's gone. So that's going to be gone as this economy turns back around. So we have to watch that. Our number one job as your representatives and senators is to put a budget in place so that the local communities can exercise off of that budget and do their things. It's not our job to get in the senator or the sheriff's business. It's not our job to get in the city's business or community development or the schools. That's why we have local folks. So when I look at this, it's how do we put a budget in place that local decisions can happen. What we're seeing, though, is a propensity right now from the governor's office and the Democrat legislators and majority to over-regulate and to over-govern. And there's a fear that, oh my gosh, we might do something out here in rural Minnesota. Like, for example, we might provide rural transportation because we have a huge need there, but in Minneapolis, they're going to make it so that Lyft and Uber can't operate there. I mean, that's the kind of things we're facing. We're out here just trying to get elderly transportation so people can go to medical appointments, and they're trying to make it so that they have no transportation or they over-regulate it. When I look at some of the bills, and you know, I can get very political, and I can tell you all the bad things they're doing, but at the end of the day, how I see the role that I've been put into is how do I respond to the local needs of our community, and how do we fight for resources that we know would otherwise go other places. And I have to fight against there's 3 here, so 131 other legislators for our area. And sometimes I'm going to fight with these guys because what may happen in Todd County, you know, there's limited resources. For example, Mike's doing a great job right now of trying to get some money for the Browerville School. They had a roof collapse. Those things happen. Roofs collapse, roads break, bridges go down, and we have EMT services in the rural area that are in desperate need of funding. And so we have to watch that. So many of the things that I have seen, just crazy stuff that has been introduced. For example, there's a state constitutional bill that would make state legislation year-round. So why is that a bad idea? Because rural Minnesota needs representation. If we were to go to a year-round state legislature, all the legislators that live in rural Minnesota would end up living in St. Paul and staying there and getting their housing allowances. They would never be back in their districts. Why would you be back there? If you know, the travel, you take someone like John Burkle going to Kitson County, it's ridiculous. And frankly, to put the legislature year-round, that's 9 more months of stuff they're going to do to us. And that's just a bad idea. Yeah, I'm telling you, people say to me all the time, go pass a bill. I'm like, you don't want me to pass bills. Because every time we pass things, somebody's going to have an ill effect of that. They want to disqualify companies and be able to pick and choose who gets subsidies. Well, the problem with that is, sure, we can look at some big companies and say, oh, they're big and bad, by golly. But when you start to just throw that under a hood and add a bureaucrat to it, you're now allowing somebody to pick and choose winners. And that doesn't work. We just had a bill, and I voted against it. I think Representative Wiener and Representative Schultz voted with me. We had a very tragic situation where a worker, fireman down in Belle Plaine, died in an accident. So he was hit on the road as a DOT worker. Terrible situation. And normally what happens in a situation like that, the families from that area rally, they memorialize it. We approve them naming a bridge in in remembrance of that. But in this case, they actually paid for the memorial. Now, the reason that's a bad precedent, and I voted against it, and people are like, oh, you just don't like, and I'm like, no. You are putting the state government in the position to pick and choose who we memorialize. What we have done is said we don't pay for any of that. Local communities can do it, we just approve it. But now we've created a situation where a bureaucrat will decide, well, this death we can memorialize because we have in the budget, but this one we can't. And in a very politically charged environment like we have today, the people we'll memorialize will be the people who have the power. So if you are right now a majority person in the Democrat, your memorialization is going to go through. If you're not liked as a Republican, we may not memorialize your people. That's a terrible place for the government to be. Another one, the governor had, they're honest to goodness, there's a bill introduced banning companies from making cell phone covers that look like weapons. Okay. I didn't even know where to start with that. I mean, what are we talking about? And I certainly don't want somebody to hold up something to a law enforcement that could mimic a weapon and we create a bad situation. But where do we draw the line? Is it, is it camouflage? We just can't overregulate this stuff. The governor once, he's out there talking about how we shouldn't be banning books. My goodness. Our school board, our educators here have a process to go through books. The governor is not saying, hey, we're going to prevent anybody from banning books. What he's saying is I'm going to create another office in the Department of Education that's going to decide and help librarians. The reason we have librarians and media specialists is to make the age-appropriate decisions. And you know what? If the public doesn't like a book, we have a process. Let's let our local people have that conversation. A couple of other things. So we have some local things going on. Flensburg's been trying to get some relief for their sewer, so I'm working on trying to get some things there. Broadband, I hear this all the time. The Broadband Grant Office, your townships, please work with your counties and your townships, apply for those funds. The Fishing Museum, I'm trying to find some DNR money there. We have a great resource with the Fishing Museum that's we have one of the best tourist areas. If you come here, and we have folks that arrive by the airport, we have it all the time, fly-ins, or they'll drive in, and they're going to go to the zoo, they're going to go to the Lindbergh House, they're going to go to the Fishing Museum. Eventually, they're going to be going to a military museum that is going to be put up on Highway 371 right out of Ripley. So we have the ability to attract people to this area, and guess what happens when people come here? They spend money, and that money goes in the economy, and it helps keep our tax base in check. The last thing that I'll talk about is, and thank you to the schools. I see Mark and Greg here. They have a transportation that's going very well. The problem is we have a cannabis law in place as well. And so I just saw a bill from Representative Hewitt who wants to modify the penalties for under 21 marijuana use. Why did we pass the law? And so now here we are where we're now worried about the youth using cannabis. And guess what? If you're, while they have a great transportation program teaching kids how to do CDLs and get their licenses, but at the same time, if these kids are trying gummies and other things and it's in their system, they're going to lose their jobs. So we can't create a situation where we make everything okay, but we don't make everything okay. It just doesn't work. So with that, love to hear your questions. Thank you for all your support, and certainly looking forward to hearing your concerns as well. So thank you.
Thank you for the opening statements. We will now take questions from the audience. However, before we begin, just so you know, there are some open seats out here. Make sure you speak at the podium, speak clearly into the mic. Please state your name and the city before you begin. We will take our, we will start with the questions and comments. Thank you.
I'm speaking as a veteran. I'm retired from the National Guard. I had 9 years active Navy.
John, what's your name?
And, John Justin, and I'm from Little Falls Township area. And I'm just, I know that you're already aware of this to some degree, but I want to speak about there's a support burial equity for guards and reserves. Most people that I talk to are probably would not be aware, but not all veterans are recognized for benefits, totally depends on how long they served, whether on active duty. And there is a public law signed by the President of the United States on March 15, 2022, which allows individual states to determine and allow certain veterans to be buried at the Minnesota State Veterans Cemetery or at their cemeteries. I don't know if it involves any money from the state, but it's up to the state to do this. And some states have allowed this. These are veterans. In my situation, if I had not been on active duty, if I had joined the Guards, I still would have been called up to the Austin Meat Packer strikes, which I did. I would have still been put on stop loss, which means I would have been carried beyond my enlistment period because of the wartime. I would have still been trained for the wartime. I would have worn the uniform, and my family would have had a lot of the sacrifices that all the other veterans do. Yet, because I did not have 180 days of active duty, not for training, I would not qualify to be buried at the Veterans Cemetery. And I think this is wrong. I don't like when they take veterans and they put them in categories like this. Those guys made the sacrifice, they made themselves available, they wore the uniform. So what I'm asking is not only where you would stand on that, but for you to bring that issue up to whoever the Veterans Affairs Committee members are, and to support allowing our veterans, all our veterans that have worn the uniform, to be buried at a Minnesota State Veterans Cemetery. Thank you.
I can answer this one. John, was it you that I talked to about this a little while back ago about? I can't remember.
I talked to you at the caucuses.
That's what I thought. So I talked to Senator Howe. He has a bill to try to address these things. So I got my name on that bill yesterday, and we're working to do what you just said. All veterans need to be buried in state cemeteries. So it doesn't matter how long you served or, yeah.
And just quickly, Senator Howe and I came in together, we're roommates, and him and I have been working on this for a while. We have talked to the Veterans Affairs Office, and there's some things we just have to do. We have to get some permissions, but John, you make my point. We have bureaucrats making decisions about who we choose to memorialize, and we're gonna get that fixed.
Frank Goshek from Little Falls. I'm kind of representing Fishing Museum and Camp Ripley Veterans State Trail. State Trail, I've been working on that for 16 years and tired of seeing all the money going to the metro area and not a whole lot coming up in this direction. I have good support from Ron Krisha. I thank you for it. And we did put in for a bond request, and I would like it supported through the Senate, Mr. Wiesenberg. It'd be nice. I know there's a lot of issues in this state, and they're all important. Everything I listened to a little while ago is very important. But I also feel recreation and for getting this area, you know, more developed economically, it'd be nice to see the Fishing Museum go through. It'd also be nice to see this trail, which would hook up the southern trails with the northern, or the missing link in between. I think economically it really benefit this area. And it's good for people to get out there and bicycle and ride their ATVs and stuff. But anyway, I'd like to see some support for that. I'd like to see this go through. We have a bond request, and Mr. Wiesenberg, I'd really appreciate if maybe you can do something there. All the issues you're dealing with are important, but I feel this is an important one too. So anyway, that's all I want to say.
I would like to say something about this. Thank you, Frank, for your comments, and to John, I've never met you, but thank you for your service. You know, I think everybody, especially on our side of the aisle, supports the veterans. In my area, we have Eagles Healing Nest, and working with Homes for Heroes, just talked to them, met them yesterday. Look forward to doing more for our vets, so thank you. When it comes to bonding, I believe we have a really serious problem with the way bonding works in our state. If you look at how the money is divvied up, where it goes, we see a huge imbalance where it goes to certain areas. Now, bonding generally, typically, and is advertised as infrastructure spending, roads, bridges, waterworks. But if you look at the way the bonding bills are broke down, it becomes pet projects. It becomes fodder for political campaigns. So even in the current bill, we have bonding money that's getting allocated to maintenance and upkeep to state buildings. Now that should be an operating expense. What that ends up being is creative accounting. We're shifting money from one area in order to free up money in another. In bonding, there's wants and needs. And my favorite project that I hammer on all the time, it was a rugby field in the North Metro. $18 million rugby field in the North Metro that we are helping to pay for. Now, I believe that when we have projects like this, whether it's trails, whether it's museums, things like this, that should probably come out of a different source. So the lottery money, which was talked about yesterday, which was on the floor, we voted on, I think would be a better option for some of these projects. Because that bonding bill has gotten so big and so out of control, and then so many pet projects in there, that it becomes, like I said, fodder for political races. If we want an area that's contentious, we want our campaign or our candidate to get across the finish line, you'll see an exorbitant amount of money come into that area. St. Cloud is a prime example. Contentious race there. They're looking at spending $100 million through bonding into that area. Now, don't you think some of that money would be better spent in all of our areas versus one area that's going to benefit from it because of a contentious race? So the lottery money, I think, is a better way to spend some of these things, and that gives us more local control. We can apply for those grants, we can spend time and effort going after them, and that's something that gives us a little bit more control on that bonding bill, because it has gotten so far out of line of what it's supposed to be, the wants and the needs. It's a serious problem in the way we do business. So I think that should probably be a different route, or a potentially different route for that money to come from another source.
Yeah, and thanks, Frank, for bringing that up. And I know we've talked about this the past couple of years, and I know I've said we need to try to find another source of that income too. And I've talked to Chuck Perrins about it, and I've talked to Brett Bussman about it, and we got to find a different. I don't have to reiterate what Mike just said. We have to find some way to get that money, but right now we're hurting. Our nation's hurting. Our state's hurting, and there's wants and needs, and people need sewer and water. People need to drive on roads, and our taxes are going like this, and we keep asking for more money. So while some people are putting forward bonding projects that we can't afford and don't need right now, and then asking Senate Democrats to sign on to them and not telling their senator in their district about it, I'm trying to cut your taxes and save your money. I just introduced a bill to cut all Tier 1 taxes for everybody. That would help everybody across the aisle, Democrat, Republican, whatever party you're with. It would cut the first tier of income taxes would be gone. So if you're single and you make $31,000 or less, you pay 0 income taxes. If you're married filing jointly, you pay 0 income taxes up to the first $46,000. And that would be a tax cut across the board for every single person who pays taxes in the state of Minnesota. Now they asked me, where's that money come from? We had $3.7 billion in excess taxes this year, and we got $3 million sitting in a rainy day fund. All that money, there'd still be money left over after everybody gets money back. So if you're married filing jointly, you're gonna save $2,500 in taxes next year. Your money should stay in your pocket and be used what's best for you. That's where we are right now. People are hurting, businesses are closing, businesses are leaving the state in droves. What happened when our state shut down is people were just killed. People had to leave the state because they couldn't afford to live here. I've got so many people asking me what's going to happen. I'm going to leave Minnesota. That's what they're telling me. So rather than spending money we can't afford to spend right now, we have to figure out how to stop spending, get back on track, help people out, because everybody needs help right now. And there are things that are needed, but there are things that we just have to wait for. When I was a kid, people had Nintendos. I literally built sticks outside and rocks, and I pretended to play Nintendo with sticks and rocks. So that's where I come from. We have to use our money wisely, and we're not doing that right now. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy Pakula. I'm from Little Falls, right here in Morrison County. I would like to thank you all for coming today. I know your jobs are not very easy, so spending time in front of the public is very important, and I appreciate it. I would like to thank first you, Senator Wiesenberg, for all your hard work and perseverance since taking office. I'd also like to thank you for accepting the Rocks and Cows of Minnesota petition to preserve the current Minnesota flag, and for attending the flag rally at the state capitol on Tuesday. We haven't received any support from 4 out of our 5 county commissioners, and since he's here, I would like to thank Bobby Casper for being the one commissioner that is willing to talk about preserving our current Minnesota flag. So all this is greatly appreciated, and that you're willing to listen and stand for your constituents. Before you comment on that, Mr. Senator, I would like to turn my attention to Mr. Kreshaw, because you may have something to add to this. Last week on the front page of the Morrison County Record is the article covering your bill, Mr. Kreshaw, HF 4093, a bill seeking $500,000 for hangar renovations at the Little Falls and Morrison County Airport. Now, considering this airport has received already over $2.4 million in taxpayer dollars since 2019, I think it's completely unreasonable to award another $500,000 to this airport when the communities in this county are already in serious financial struggles due to multiple reasons. $500,000 could go a long ways to repair our county's roads, bridges, and critical infrastructure instead of it going to benefit a very select minority of our county's population who actually use the airport. Mr. Kreshaw, you are a flight instructor, correct?
Yeah.
To me, this also should be looked at as a possible conflict of interest, considering you may be possibly benefiting from the very funding that you are proposing. I'd appreciate your response to that, and I'd like to hear Senator Wiesenberg's thoughts as well. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Pakula. So first of all, on the flag issue, on that day that there was a rally, I was working with Representative Bjorn Olson. We signed on to 9 bills, and we introduced those. And what we're trying to do is have the flag issue brought back up in November. Whether people agree or disagree with the flag, I personally don't think we should have made the change. But I do think that we left the voters out on that decision. And what we're proposing is that come up in November. If people vote for the new flag, then it's settled. If they don't vote for it, we go back. And the reason if we don't settle this, every 2 years as the legislature changes, we're going to be fighting this flag bill. So there's that. Mr. Pakula, thank you for the question on the airport. So I received a request from the commission, the airport commissioner, as well as from the airport manager asking for these funds. And when we have local funds, they get matched with federal. I appreciate the fact that you think it's a conflict of interest, but I vote on bills for driving. I'm on roads all the time. I'm a business owner. I hunt and fish. I introduce and pass those legislation. So I mean, I don't know how this benefits me personally. I don't make any money off of it. I'm responding to a request from our airport manager, who I believe has done a great job and is telling us about the infrastructure changes. I respond to the schools. I have kids in the schools. So I get it. This is a personal issue, and people want to come after me because I've tried to do a lot of good for this area. And I just want you to know I'm responding to what people are coming to me from. I respect where my colleagues may be on bonding, but bonding does personal finance authority. When we had to put a water tower in Randall, these are the mechanisms we have. I'm not king. I can't change how the money's funded. All I can do is fight for your money and fight for yours. And if I don't, it gets lost. It becomes a spoon in Minneapolis. It becomes a mural. It goes somewhere else. So at the end of the day, I don't like to lose opportunities for this area. I want us to grow. I don't want us to be stagnant. I've seen too many communities that become stagnant and lose a tax base, and then they, nobody wants to set up a business there anymore. You've seen those shuttered towns. I don't want the areas that I represent to become shuttered. And so I'll say that if you want to push this to conflict of interest, there's an ethics committee. I'm sure they'd love to hear it. But like I said, then you better go after everybody who votes for hunting and fishing that's introduced bills, for property tax bills, because they pay property taxes. We can go all the way down the list on that. So that's what I'll say about that. I'll keep responding to the requests that you bring to me, and if you don't want me to do that, then you'll have to find somebody else to run for this office.
So yeah, with the flag issue, I know there's been, I think we've received probably responses from about 22 counties where the commissioners said they just want to let people have the choice to vote, right? That's where it should go to. Because what happened is the governor chose 13 people. So the governor got to choose what happened to the flag, really. So the governor chose 13 people and they chose to change the flag. So really it should go to you to vote. It's not up to me. And this is an issue that I heard, like this is one of the biggest issues I heard about in the last 4 or 5 months is people are frustrated with the flag. So it's not something I just was like, I brought this up. This is what I heard, so this is what we're doing. People want a voice, you should have a voice. If we vote and the flag, if we vote to change it, then the flag will change, but it needs to be up to you. It can't be up to 13 or whoever, a dozen unelected bureaucrats to change history. And you know, during that day, there were Native Americans that were speaking about how they didn't want the flag to change. We had Native American groups reaching out to us saying how they didn't want the flag to change. So you know what, Jeremy was, Mr. Pikula was saying about, you know, county commissioners not getting on board. We're not asking much. You know, county commissioner, that's an elected position. They're elected by the people. So the people are saying, would you please say that I want my voice to be heard? That's all we're saying is the people should have a voice. That's all we're asking for. You should have a voice. You should get to vote on if the flag changes. So that would go on the ballot in November if we can get some of these laws through. I know. I think he mentioned there's like 9 bills that were drafted. Senator Jarzowski has a bunch in the Senate. Everyone's got their names in some of these bills, so we can try to fight for your voices. Now, you know, with bonding, we talked about bonding, I think the first day back in session in the Senate, and we said, who is going to do bonding this year unless it's a necessity? Nobody raised their hand. We said we're not doing bonding because we can't afford it. If it's, I mean, water towers need to be, that's bonding. That's literally bonding. But we also, so this came, there's a rules committee hearing, I think it's today, talking about rules that happened on the Senate floor. So things that were brought up, I didn't bring these up, but things that were brought up were conflict of interest in bills. And if there's a conflict of interest with a nonprofit or direct profit to you, direct profit would be if, let's say you're working somewhere and you're asking for money for that thing, that would be a conflict. No, I mean, I'm passing bills for, you know, trying to stop wolf hunting. That doesn't benefit me. I buy a license, but that doesn't benefit me financially. I just go hunting. It actually benefits the DNR, and they're doing a very not great job managing our state right now. But so going back to bonding, we don't have the money, and it has to be. I have, you know, the Gilman Water project that we're doing right now. You know, sewer. Those things need to happen, and we need that money. But the other things are just going to have to wait because that's where we are right now. We can't. We got to fix our home before we can keep building things other places, and it's unfortunate that, you know, people in the cities might be getting some of this bonding money. It has to stop. What was it last year? 25%, Mike? I don't know. But, you know, we were told that bonding was 50-50. It wasn't. But that's why we have to vote differently, and we have to get people out to vote. And then everybody should be treated equally. And that's what I'm trying to fight for, but we're not. So, yes, we need to have businesses in town, and yes, these things need to happen. But we can keep businesses in our state and in our towns if we also lower our taxes and don't spend money. And then there's free market. Get a loan, buy a business, work hard, and you make money. And then when you make money, you employ people, and those people make money, and they buy stuff. And that stuff that's bought, more people, that creates more jobs. And then those people make money. That's how we do this. So, thanks.
I'm just going to jump in on this quick here. So thank you all for sharing your concerns about the flag. And to accentuate a little bit of the point here, there has to be action in order to stop the flag from changing. So you heard a little bit about, you know, how we got to this point, but on May 11th, which is Statehood Day, the flag for the state will change unless the legislature takes a vote to either put it to the people or to stop it entirely. So I know that I've communicated this a number of times to many of you, especially if you're on my email update list. We need to convince a few Democratic legislators to push this forward in both the House and the Senate to stop it from becoming the state flag again on May 11th. So we're under a time crunch. If you're passionate about that, like I am and like all of us are up here, please be engaged on that. I am going to touch on the airport topic here for a moment. This is our community, and it's the Little Falls Public Airport, and it serves Morrison County and the surrounding areas. You know, the other end of the district that I represent, we have the Malacca Airport. It's the public airport. And certainly we all share an interest. There's been dollars from the federal government, there's been dollars from the state government, there's been dollars from the local level to support our public airport. We all have access to that. It's the same as our roads and our bridges, and it should be treated as such. And so let's also keep in mind that that is not only a key part of our future economic growth and the strength of our community as it is today. I think it's exciting, the idea that we have the chance to see more and more people involved in aviation. We need that. And so let's just consider for us all, doesn't matter whether it's this one particular project, but let's not attack our airport. It's a key part of our community, and it's a public asset.
And just a quick follow-up, we don't need to make this a carnival, and we're not in a theater of opposition. I mean, my colleagues, like I said, some things we're going to agree on, some things we're not. That's how it works. That's what happens in St. Paul. Senator Wiesenberg, Representative Wiener, Representative Schultz, I'm not fighting these guys, but I will try to get resources as people come to ask, and people may disagree with that. I voted against bonding bills. I voted for them. But at the end of the day, I'm fighting things like the Democrats trying to remove religious freedoms. I'm trying to fight the Democrats trying to get into our schools. I'm not fighting these gentlemen. And if that comes out in any way, and Mr. Pikula, if you want to try to drive a wedge between us, Senator Wiesenberg, if you don't like me or not, that's not my get. I have way more important things to do than to fight my colleagues, and so that's not even something I worry about. We can disagree. We should disagree down there, and I'll tell you this. If we don't disagree and get to the truth, then we're not doing our job. I respect these guys, sure, if they want to vote for it, but here's what I will not do. I will not fight for your projects, not vote for a bonding bill, and then take credit for things I didn't vote for. I just can't do that. That's not me that's not me. I've been down there too long to know there's things I can't change and there's things I can. It's a limited resources battle. And like I said, I fully respect where other people are at. I don't castigate, I don't criticize anybody else what they want to do. But guess what? You're going to get all of me, and there's two sides of me. There's turn the other cheek Jesus, and there's turn the tables over Jesus. And depending on the issue, I'm going to give you one of those.
I think we got a little bit off track. I mean, we started off talking about bonding. And I'll share a little bit of personal story. I wasn't attacking anybody. What my thoughts were here is...
I'm not saying that. Don't get me wrong. I'm just clarifying. You can agree or disagree.
Okay. So let me say this. I like to question why. Why do we do this? When I moved away, went to college, my brother was clearing some land over by Lake Osakis and bought a piece over there, not on the lake, he can't afford that, trust me, but off the lake, and he had a lot of trees, so we were clearing the spot for his house. And during college, I would come up here and run the chainsaw and bobcat, and we were clearing off that land. Well, there was no Amish when I left. But by the time he had bought that house or that property and started clearing land, there was Amish in our area. And he said, we're going to stack the wood out in the ditch, cut it up into lengths, and some of the Amish are going to come and take it. So that was my first interaction with Amish. Well, I had a little problem getting the team of horses and the wagon through the ditch after the trailer was loaded, right? So we pulled him out with the bobcat. Second time he comes back and does it again. I got a chance to visit. And he pulls out a big lighter to light his pipe. And I just stopped. And I said, why? You have steel wheels on your trailer. You got horses pulling the trailer here. And you pull out a modern invention like a Bic lighter to light your pipe. Why? And he said, that's just the way it is. And I think that's not a good enough answer. So when it comes to government, I look at this and I often ask the question, why? So when we look at the bonding thing, and I've asked this question many, many times, and I say, why? Why do we pick this project versus that project? Why are we structured the way we are? And so many times that's just the way it is. But our human nature, we can start at one point and end up somewhere totally different because we're not analyzing why we're doing the things we're doing and why we're not doing things we should sometimes. And all of a sudden you can look back at where you started and go, well, how the heck did I end up here? Because we didn't ask the question why. And this is what I see with bonding. So I literally look up the definition of bonding and infrastructure. It is infrastructure. And that can be classified as, you know, a myriad of different things. But what this started off as and where we are now with bonding is two entirely different things. Like I say, when you say a rugby field in Anoka is bonding, I would highly disagree with that. That does not serve the general population in this state. It is not critical infrastructure. That's wants versus needs. So now you can define an airport. I mean, if that's a local thing, if you want to define that. I think as a state, we have gotten so far from where we started. And I think that's the huge benefit of having, we had 25 new freshmen in the House this year.
Just on the Republican side.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just on the Republican side. I'm not sure how many senators. That question of why, when you have new people stepping in and going, why are we doing this? Is this the best way that government is supposed to operate? Does it serve the people? I think that's a crucial thing. So when I look at bonding, I'm not against your project, but I'm saying, is bonding the best source? Is that the way this was supposed to be structured? Is there other options? We have the rock wall in Long Prairie around the courthouse and a memorial to the veterans at the top. And I was asked, should this go through bonding? I don't agree that that should. Can we find money in the veterans? Can we find the money in historical society? Can we find money in other avenues? I believe those are better sources of where that money should come from. Because that bonding, by definition, is supposed to serve the infrastructure and the whole population of that state. That rock wall does not do that, in my opinion. Now, I think if we talk about these ideas and we discuss them, it's not me attacking somebody else. It's me looking at the system and saying, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing here. And if we get more people to realize that the role of government and the scope of government, which was the point here on several of the things, is grown so massive and so influential in our lives that it's become this Leviathan that is crushing us to some extent. Whether it's our schools, local education, we want more local autonomy. We don't want the government necessarily to dictate everything for our schools. For our local government, we don't want the government, the state government or federal to necessarily, because every community is different. Every area is different. In my area, Long Prairie versus Browerville, railroad towns 8 miles apart, night and day difference. And when the government has a one-size-fits-all, those schools get the same money to an entirely different set of criteria and needs in those areas. That's where I think we need to start questioning why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Is it the best way to govern? And should we bring more of that control back to local instead of dictating it from the palace down in the metro? So that's my point with bonding. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank the Chamber for hosting us. Thank Ron, Isaac, Nathan, and Mike for taking time out of your day to come here and answer questions and listen to people, I guess. My name is James Storley. I'm a Little Falls resident. I am the commander of the DAV Chapter 12 here in Morrison County. I'm also a member of the American Legion, Post 46 here in Little Falls, also on the executive board. So I imagine you know what I'm going to be speaking about today. I'm going to reiterate what my friend John has spoke about. We have a resolution that's going through our veteran community right now in support of Burial Equality for Guard and Reserve Act, which is Public Law 117-103. And that's been adopted by both the American Legion Post here in Little Falls, along with its auxiliary. It has also been adopted through the county post, and it's also been adopted by Chapter 12 of Morrison County. It's been submitted to the state of Minnesota, the DAV Department of Minnesota. It's going to be on the list at our convention coming up the end of April. So the other couple of things that I want to talk about, there's a bill, HF 4259. This is the Disabled Veterans Property Tax exclusion. Hasn't been modified for 16 years. We need to modify that. This is something that's going through. I hope I can get a response that you will all support this, along with Bill HF 4394, which is our veterans, survivors, spouses, and children's education benefit. As I'm sure you hear from a lot of our employers, they need educated people. Why can we not educate our military members or their families and get them into the workforce with what's needed? So those are the few things that I want to talk about, those three things. Our men and women in uniform, they've done their job. They protected our rights, they protected our freedoms, they've given you the opportunity to be where you're at right now. It's time for you guys to stand up and do what your job is and support our veterans. We are having a Veterans Day on the Hill. We're taking a bus from Little Falls, April 17th. We will be down in the Rotunda fighting for these issues. Hopefully you can come and attend our luncheon at the Armory. We will be taking a bus. That bus is open to anybody. You don't have to be a veteran. It's a free ride down there. If you want to join and fight our veteran community, there's a sign-up roster at our American Legion. There's one at our VFW. There's one in Randall at the VFW. Sign up. We'll welcome you aboard. So, am I getting a commitment from our elected officials to support these veterans' issues?
Thank you for your service, and thank all veterans for their service. What's the line from, I think it's Saving Private Ryan? You know, live your life worth their sacrifice. And that's what we need to do. So, yeah, we'll support you.
Yes. Make it simple.
Yeah, there's a whole host of things, and I think we want to say thank you, number one, not only for your service, but over the last several years, and I know Representative Krish has been a key voice in this, and I think that what happened even last session is going to help us. A few years ago, maybe about 10 years ago, Minnesota landed as one of the bottom 10 states in terms of friendliness towards veterans, towards our military community. And through a whole host of legislative changes, including what happened last year, Minnesota is now in the top 5, and potentially, I think we're number 2 in the way that we treat our veterans nationwide. And that's something to be celebrated, and we're so blessed to live in a community where we have such a strong tie, where I believe that every single family in our community is connected to military service, and that's a huge blessing. And so thank you, and I'm excited to have you guys down at the Capitol, and we'll work for these changes for the long term. Some of these things may be able to be achieved yet this legislative session, and if not, then they'll remain priorities for the long term.
I'll take a stab at this one. Can you say the second bill number again?
Absolutely, I'll give you both of them. One is HF 4259, that's the disabled veterans property tax relief exclusion. And the other one is HF 4344, which is the educational benefit for our veteran spouses and so on. So
Okay.
if I'm hearing correctly, so I can let our legislative director at the state of Minnesota for DAV, you're all supporting our bills, correct?
Well, I wanted to make
Hold your feet to the fire.
I wanted to make sure I had the number right because I typed in 94, not 44. That's a gender identity bill, and I just wanted clarification there. Apparently my handwriting isn't that good because I just wanted to make sure. But actually what 4259 is actually a clone bill that we saw. I believe Knutson carried the one on the Republican side to change those provisions. And what we see is, so we can start off with a bill and it has a chance of going through. What will happen is the other side will end up writing a clone bill, which basically does the same.
Something we've been fighting for probably
Right.
4 or 5 years.
Right, so
It's been modified in 16 years.
right, and I believe that was the Republican side was the Knutson bill, which I'm pretty sure I had already signed on that one. But as far as the other one, I'm glad for the clarification because that was something that would be an issue, I guess. But thank you.
Disabled veterans, right, property tax?
Yes.
That's disabled veterans,
Yep.
not all veterans.
And just quickly on that, Mr. Strolley, thank you, and thank you to the veterans here as well. You know, I don't think you'll get any disagreement. We support the veterans issues and support the men and women there. And we'll support the issues, but I will say this, it's difficult when you give us a bill number and say, will you support that bill number? Because I don't know what that bill is going to look like when it hits the House floor. Like I said, just the other day, I voted against a memorial because the concept was the right thing, but the way they were doing it was wrong. So your issues are right on. I have no worries about that, and I think you have great support. As Isaac said, when we were in the majority, we brought some of the taxes down for retiring veterans to bring them to this state. So that support is there, and thank you for all your work.
John Justin again. I'd like to speak on another issue. Personally, I don't like gambling because I think people get addicted and it's, so my personal issue is I don't like gambling. However, I do see, being that the member, I'm the chaplain for the American Legion Post here, and I'm on the executive board, and I see where the gambling funds go to. And it supports a lot of really good local, veterans group that supports a lot of Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, the community, does a lot of good. But we continually have issues from the state where they want to take more and more money from the gambling bill to go to the state, and less money that actually goes to the groups that are giving them out to the charity. I have no issues with the state taking a share, but I just want to know what your thoughts are on these issues as far as they keep making changes that affect gambling, and it's just the state always wants more and more money. So my concern is it gets to a point where it's not helping the communities, and it helps communities throughout the whole state, not just Little Falls, the whole state. There's a lot of good. So I'd like to just have your thoughts on where the gambling bills are going and that way the state taking its share and how they're affecting. Okay.
Yes, got it. Thank you, John. I'll take a stab at this first, and if there's others in the room who have a particular passion over this issue, or if whether you're a local gambling director at one of our local organizations, frankly, I would love additional amounts of input from you. So now that I sit on the Commerce Committee, these bills have to travel through that committee, and there's been a lot of talk over the last several years about this. The changes that were made last year were really quite devastating to our local charities. And you know, I've been able to kind of, and this example is in almost every single community, but I really like using Swanville. I attended the Swanville graduation last spring, and you know, a class in Swanville is, you know, less than 30 kids, and each student who was choosing to pursue higher education was able to receive a scholarship of something like $2,500. Every single student who chose to go to some avenue of higher education was receiving a scholarship because of what their local charitable organization had done throughout the local community. And ultimately, because of the changes last year that are upcoming here, I believe it's the beginning of next year is when that fully takes effect, a lot of our local charities are going to be devastated by this, and it's going to be less dollars into our communities. And this is certainly a topic that we have to work on, and we have to ensure that the voices of our kids and our communities, whether it's the Rice Sportsman's Club or our American Legion chapters, that they're able to continue to pay it back to our local communities. And so there's a lot that needs to be discussed there. There's a lot happening regards to sports gambling, regards to casinos, and I think that as we look at that topic, a large topic at play, I believe that the DFL party is fully in the pocket of one specific interest group that isn't the interest group of our community. And I'm going to leave it at that and let my colleagues take a stab.
So thank you, John, and I'm sure you hit the beast right in the heart. Every decision we deal with has a positive and negative. I hate gambling. I've watched what it's done to my family, you know, people that I'm related to. I hate marijuana. I've watched what it's done to those. But what we do is, as a representative of this area, I'm fighting other areas of the state that don't agree with our values and our principles. And when you look at, you know, the metro area, by and large, has different interests, and they want to use the money for different things that we generally don't agree with up in here. We like to be outdoors. We like our tourism. We like our lakes. We love our veterans museum that's coming. We love our military cemetery. We love those things because they're at the heart of who we are. But here we are, and you said it right away. I have to look at this and say, okay, knowing the devastating things that gambling does, and then we put the state in the middle of that, and now the tribes in the middle of it, who are taking the sin tax, that's what it is, and sucking those dollars out of our communities. I weigh this out and go, I mean, if I had my perfect world, we'd just get rid of gambling. But now we're heading down to the point where we're going to go to online sports gambling. And if you don't think that's a nasty thing, just go look at your younger generation of how they Venmo money back and forth. For them to drop electronically money in online sports gambling, that the only reason it's not here now is because the tribes want all of that. That's what we're fighting, folks. The scholarships, the local school, the Flyer Athletics Booster Club, the Swanville, absolutely 100%. But we are destroying lives to get those money, and we have to recognize that. And sometimes I have to vote for this issue knowing I'm going to hurt people's lives, but you know what? The greater good and the more kids that are going to get scholarships outweighs the fact that there's addiction out there. Sunday liquor sales, hated it. It only increased alcoholism and domestic violence on Sundays. But what do? So every issue we deal with, we have those issues, and that's what we sit and weigh. And you're absolutely right. I mean, you said it. You look at the lottery dollars. Should we be taking people whose last dollar that they should be buying necessities, and they're buying lottery tickets because they think they're going to hit it big? You've seen them. I've seen them. Go to any establishment here that does online gambling and pull tabs, and tell me it's not a good thing. It's not. But So I'm with you. I don't want the state to suck those dollars out of here, but it is a sin tax. Everything we do, like I said, the best thing you do is don't make us year-round legislators, because the more we're in St. Paul, the more we mess it up.
So I just had a couple of questions or whatnot about our community. So talking about the state flag just reminds me of, so our school district here in Little Falls was literally talking about how saying the Pledge of Allegiance every day to the students becomes indoctrination. I don't know if there is any way that we can do some type of like policy or Pledge of Allegiance policy, but also what are your guys' thoughts on like parental rights for obviously parents whose kids are in the school and want to fight for their children without being gaslit or totally doxxed from their community, and where you stand with the education and things that are moving forward within schools?
If you guys want to take a shot at it.
Well, I believe everybody up on stage here supports parental rights in education. And ultimately, I think that a lot of the impacts that we've seen have been honestly coming down from the federal government. A really big, heavy hand from the federal government, and then Democrats in St. Paul just pick up that mantle, and they run as far to the left as they humanly possibly can. So much so as to say that essentially that teachers have more rights than the parents do, and look, I truly believe at the heart, and because some of them are my family members and some of them may be in this room, but we have incredible teachers here in our community. By and large, there's exceptions to every rule. But let's also understand the strength of our schools comes from the fact that these teachers are the people who live in our community, and they go to church with us, and they're at our kids' basketball games and track meets and everything else, and they're involved in teaching Sunday school at our churches, and so we as a community need to continue to stand up for parental rights in education, and to support parents whatever the path of that they would like their educational outcomes to be, or to chase the school choice as an example, and so we need to help encourage parents to be more involved in our kids' education and interacting, whether it's with the school board, and encourage positive relationships. That's the number one thing that I think we can do, because I believe in local control, and when we have parents who are involved and engaged with our administrators, with our school board, with the teachers, we can really achieve some incredible outcomes and set a better standard for the way that education should be done in our state. I graduated from Uppsala, and I love the impact that we can all make when we get more involved, when we show up, and when we're engaged. And so absolutely support parental rights in education. I actually put forward a bill last year, and we'll still seek to push this forward in the future. But we need to, in state policy, just as a note to parental rights, in state policy, there should be no attempt to force vaccinations on kids in order to go to school. That should be entirely off the table, and that's a key topic that we have to be focused upon for the future when we have the chance to lead again and have the majority in the House or Senate.
Yeah, obviously parents have rights over their children and the government doesn't. I was just writing things down as they came up. So, I'm a term limits person for everything. I'm actually I wrote a bill for term limits for the governor, not just this governor, all governors going forward. It should be a president can run 2 terms, a governor should only be able to run 2 terms. So if that goes forward, it would go on the ballot this year and it would be retroactive. But I think we need term limits in all forms of government. There's also a term limits bill I'm on that would say you can only be in the House for 10 years, you can only be in the Senate for 10 years in Minnesota, and you have to go. Because these jobs are never meant to be careers. You go in with a special thing, you help, and then you go back to your job, and then other people have to have their opinions heard. So maybe, same thing with school boards. Maybe we need to limit the amount of time someone's on a school board, because if we're continue to do the same thing wrong and not fix it, then we're never going to go forward. And our education right now is failing us. You know, scores are going down, we're putting more money, and it's not the teacher's fault. You know, so I'm, it always get, when you say education, teachers feel bad. I'm trying to fight for the teachers, but you know, teachers have the opportunity to not pay their union dues. If all the teachers quit paying their union dues, this goes away and you get what you want. We can help you get what you want. I've been receiving lots of emails saying, can you please lower the retirement age because I want to quit teaching? That saddens me. We should not be in a place where teachers have been in school and teaching for 30 years or 25 years, however long, and now they want to quit because all the pressure that's being put on them by the government to not teach kids but indoctrinate kids with social issues. We're not educating kids. Math, science, reading. We need to be teaching kids and not talking about the other things. The other stuff, keep it out of school. I understand that not everybody has a mom and dad, not everybody has a mom, not everybody has a dad, and there are issues. But we can't treat the extremes as that's what's always happening to everybody. And we always go to the extreme, and that's what we're using to do these things. So maybe that's a thing we can look at with the school boards. Yeah, obviously the Pledge of Allegiance is not indoctrinating our children. I don't know why that was brought up. It's ridiculous, and we know that. We're all proud and we fight for our country. Everybody has the same rights. You can come from wherever you want. Just, you know, work hard and you can do the thing. And you come here, I don't care if you come from Mars, you can come here. I don't care what color you are, what sex you are. Come here, work, take care of yourself, take care of your family, push forward, and help everybody help each other. You know, that's what we have to do. So, but, you know, I feel like I sit in education policy, and I feel like I brought this up on, what's today, Friday? It's a blur when you're at the Capitol. Wednesday, I brought this up. We're talking about tier levels and how we have to make teachers, you know, every few years go to the next tier, reevaluate how they're teaching. Well, I've got, you know, people who are 28 years old saying, I have a master's degree in teaching. Well, it's good. I'm glad that you want to be a teacher, but now they're telling teachers that have been that are, you know, 60 years old or whatever, that have been teaching for a long time, that they don't understand how to teach. You know, there's a thing, experience is a thing. You can learn from experience. You could do something for 40 years and be very experienced and be very good at your job. And I just use my mother as an example. She's 70 years old, and well, she was just teaching in Little Falls for, you know, half the year in math in the middle school. She loves teaching. She's a great teacher. And she gets phone calls, sometimes 25 a day, to come and teach because the schools know that she knows what she's doing and she does a good job. She knows how to take care of the kids. We need those people in our schools. So yes, I want to help those people, but we need to educate and not what's going on. And there's too much garbage that's going on. And yes, like Isaac said, we need local control. They're pushing for not that. If you want to do this stuff and give us local control, fine. Let us do what we need to do in our community. If you want to do something else in a different community, well, I guess that's the thing. And I can't stop it. I want to, but we got to do it here, and then let's branch out and help kids and move forward. So I keep going, but thanks.
Yeah, just a couple of comments on that. And I think, Ms. Frederick, wasn't it your daughter that made the game-winning shot the other day? Congratulations. That's awesome. Remember, teachers are parents too. And absolutely, I mean, I support it the most. Just simply 5 and 5 in the formula in the school district, you figure it out. The administration, the teachers, and the school board association, you figure out how to best educate your kids. I absolutely believe the Pledge of Allegiance is a wonderful thing, and I hope that classrooms adopt that. In some schools, they may not. I don't live in those communities. So I don't want to tip the scale across the board at all. The last legislative bill put 65 mandates on our schools. That's what's wrong, is when we put the bureaucrats in the middle of our teachers doing what they're doing. Mr. Pikula, you mentioned I'm a flight instructor. You should fly with me sometime because it'll change your life. And teachers, when you are working with people, I've been a teacher my whole life. You don't just get to know them, you change their lives. And this is why we fought for the school resource officers. Thank you to the sheriff and that. We are getting into kids' heads, as I learned a long time ago, and you stamp around a little bit in their brain and you try to just get them on the right path. I didn't support the free lunch. I still don't. I know we have free lunch for all kids, but along with parental rights, I believe in parental responsibilities. And what happened with the free lunch for all was we took $500 million out of the classrooms that our teachers could have used for better pay, because by God, it's a tough job. Our schools could have used for educational things. And instead what we did was we allowed people off the hook not to pay for their kids' lunch. Well, guess what? When my kid came to me and said, Dad, I don't have money in the lunch account, I said, how'd that work? Guess what? You're not going to be able to get a free ride at McDonald's, whatever. We had to figure that out. They had to learn that life lesson. And we've taken those responsibilities away. And so I absolutely support our schools. I absolutely support our teachers. I support our parents. But by God, I also support parents being decent to their kids and being responsible and teaching their kids how to be good citizens. And we don't have enough of that. We've all seen it. The parental responsibilities just as big as the parental rights.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
My name is Shawna Weinstein. I'm a Little Falls resident. I'm a pilot. I am chapter vice president of our local Experimental Aircraft Association. I'm a member of a Little Falls flying club that hangars our airport at the Little Falls Wilson County Airport. I'm going to argue against the comments that were made that our airport only helps a select few individuals. It was a 2019 study. It was the most recent data available on the MnDOT Aeronautics website. I'd like to see more recent data because most of you have heard since 2020, since COVID, there's a pilot shortage. So these numbers are old, but they're impactful. General aviation visitor spending at our local airport annually was $469,000 a year when the study was conducted. This airport is not just used by local people in our community, it's used by people across the state. It's used by law enforcement agencies, it's used by Camp Wrigley, it's used by DNR for fire patrol. Now there's over 126 public airports in the state of Minnesota. General aviation impact in Minnesota annually is over $18.2 billion. $66.3 million of statewide and local tax revenue for those airports, which does not include the 7 airports that are governed by the Minneapolis. The greater Minnesota airport provide that state tax revenue. The 7 airports alone in the Minneapolis area contribute $557 million. Our airport and pump out pilots at an enormous rate. Representative Prisha got us funding last year for the aviation transportation program at the high school, and we have seen several students who are now going on to university aviation programs. Last year alone, our local flight school had over 100 check rides, which means that we either created new pilots or we moved pilots on to additional ratings to go on and become airline pilots. People from all over the country are coming to our local flight school, and I get to see this firsthand. I've met students from Hawaii and Delaware and Florida and Montana who are coming here and living here and paying for things while they're staying here and training in what is now Central Minnesota's aviation training hub. This is an aviation destination that we have in our backyard that the general public doesn't really know about or have very huge misconceptions about. Now, I mentioned that I was part of an airplane club. I pay hangar rent. I pay for fuel for my airplane. These revenues go to the city. My hangar leaks. It's not secure. It's not insulated. When I make an investment in an airplane, I'm choosing to hangar that airplane in Little Falls. I want those things for my airplane club. I want to have a hangar that doesn't leak. I want it to be insulated, and I want to protect my investment, just like anybody else would do with an investment that you make. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was waiting for you guys to talk.
Sorry, I was just writing down ideas so we can talk afterwards, and yeah, so.
Kathy Lang, Executive Director at Habitat for Humanity of Morrison County. Before I start, though, to talk about affordable housing, thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Ron and Isaac, for doing our legislative day. I think Bobby Casper, one of the commissioners, is here too. Thank you for volunteering. That was a great day, and we got a lot of sheetrock hung. So I also, before I want to start, we were talking about charities a little bit. So I am part of the planning team for 100 Women Who Care in Morrison County. And Molly's here as part of the planning team. I think Brenda's part of 100 Women Who Care is trying to read the room. So what we do is we're close to getting 100 women, and we meet quarterly and just throw $100 on the table and give it to a charity that presents himself. And I think the Disabled Veterans got our last $8,000. We're almost up to 100 Women Who Care.
That was our newly formed auxiliary that got that.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. So we're part of a grassroots effort to make our communities better. So I encourage you to form 100 Men Who Care. So I'll just put that, write that down. Because you can't join our club. So okay, affordable housing. Since Habitat for Humanity in Morrison County is the only nonprofit affordable housing, I wanted to share with you where we're at. We don't get legislative dollars, but thank you for giving Minnesota Housing dollars. I can't wait to write grants that we can double our capacity here in Morrison County and build more than just one house a year. It's our 25th anniversary this year of closing on, it'll be the 24th home that we've built. And I looked back, the first home cost $46,000. Now put a $200,046 in front of that. So those are the challenges we face. And today, just briefly, I wanted to share with you an application she wrote. She had 3 pages of issues with her house, and this was one application. I had a young family in my office the other day living in a car, and of course, you know, Habitat, this is a process that we do, and of course we have resources to help them with emergency shelter. But I wanted to point out, I'm just going to read verbatim what she wrote in her application, and she says that she's living in a farmhouse outside of Randall, and she said the heat in the house does not work. She said the bedrooms in the winter are usually about 50 degrees, so me and my 3 kids, we sleep in the living room together because it's warmer in that room. She said there are many plumbing issues. The toilet that we use in the one bathroom, we cannot put toilet paper in. You have to throw it in another trash can because the toilet will instantly clog if you use toilet paper. I have tried multiple declogging agents as well as a snake and tearing apart the toilet myself. The bathtub has holes in it, however, I have tried to fix the way through the porcelain, and I've patched it so many times. But she said, I finally have it where I'm able to have my kids take a bath. She has black mold in the basement. Near the washer and dryer, the foundation is crumbling apart, and there are large holes outside. When it rains or snow melts, there's so much water that comes through that it looks like a garden hose spraying in the basement. She said, my kids and I have been hospitalized due to all the mold in our home. I have put my own money in this house. I've tried to make it a safer place for my children. However, things are only becoming worse. I can't keep living like this. She said, I have tried to find affordable housing, and there's none there. And we all know that affordable housing, if you have a Section 8 housing certificate, it's over 9 months out. So we have to do better. I thank you for the affordable housing money that went through. I know Habitat Minnesota is working on getting about $15 million, so Habitat affiliates across greater Minnesota can receive those funds. I have a full proposal when the staff is ready to implement. Unfortunately, when a new program is implemented, there needs to be staff hired to get that done, and so I'm waiting to be able to apply for grants so we can build more houses in Morrison County. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the work you do. I know we had spoke about this, I don't remember if it was in June or where it was, but you know, I had an idea if we can try to utilize some of the empty spaces we have in Little Falls. Have we talked with the city about that yet? Trying to get into those? I don't know. That's why I'm asking you, are we trying to go down that path of maybe, I know there's empty buildings in town and there's empty buildings in towns. Can we try to get into those spaces? So, and is that something we can do to have a place to put, you know, maybe, yes, it's nice to build a house, but if we can build some apartments to at least get these people into something they can, you know, be warm in and eat and be safe in.
Well, I think John.
I think that a little bit, as everybody in this room, many of you are community leaders involved in the chamber, and folks who are also small business owners. We need to encourage some more private investment into our community, and housing is one key way. The realities are the same, and I think we're all seeing this. It doesn't matter if you're trying to add on to your home, or and maybe you did in the last few years, or if you're seeking to build new. The cost of building is excessant, and the things that are happening in St. Paul are making Minnesota a more uncompetitive place to build and to grow, and that impacts nonprofits, that impacts individuals and businesses as we're seeking to grow. At the same time, I think that there's a lot of synergy in our community around finding the ways to make more private investments into housing and to continue to grow. I think that right now it has appeared like housing is one of the next barriers that we face to growing our workforce in the community. And we love our dignity of work. We love our strong work ethic that we have here. And we need to just continue to build synergies and collaboration, and then encourage. Carol Anderson was here a little bit ago for maybe the first half of this, but continue to do a good job of inviting the private investment into our housing that can benefit workforce, can benefit our local tax base, and I really think that that's the best way to go, and realize that there's a lot of things happening in St. Paul that are putting, and we see this in the Labor Committee in the House. It's like every single week we're looking at a new regulation, a new mandate on builders that is going to drive up the cost of housing. And you heard a little bit earlier about just the paint issue. That would just... I'll let you talk about that in a moment. But whether it's you can't buy more than a gallon worth of paint in order to, otherwise you have to be like a fully licensed painter and frankly a union member in order to paint, or whether it's just additional mandates from St. Paul are not going to serve building new homes and new buildings at a more affordable rate. And so we need to get back over the target where we're going to encourage private investment in our state at a lower cost.
Hang on one second. I'll let you do the electrical. That way I don't duplicate you. So, Kathy, thank you, your work. I won't step on your issue. I just want to say, the reason that I push the things I do is because, and when I hear private investment, I get that. I'm a private business owner. I've done a number of, but the reason we don't have private investment coming in, the reason we don't have these homes, because we haven't built this community. We haven't made it affordable for many of these. I mean, a business owner is going to look at two sites and they're going to decide which one is the best to grow. So we have to continue to build our amenities and our resources to attract that. I'm 100% with you. I know our city council and mayor is trying to do that. But the problem is this, and Isaac and I sponsored the bill in the House. They had $1 billion for housing. We didn't get in it. But we had a great bill for you and Aiken to be able to help that Habitat with Humanity. Because the reality, folks, is, and if you've worked with these families, when you work with a mother who's left her husband or her partner who's domestically violent to her, that kid can't wait for private investment. That kid needs safe and secure, and that kid needs a chance. I've worked with way too many families, and so we have to try to find a balance here. I'm all for finding people to come in and build homes and build housing for us. We have a child care need because we can't solve that privately either. The child care people have left in droves. So we have to solve these with other things and be creative, and I think we're hearing creative things. But I just want to say, I mean, I've hung those sheetrocks. I've been in there. I've been on those roofs. And when you see a mother and her family come in a home that they never thought they were going to have access to, that's just the right thing to do. So thank you.
It'll be just brief, just to mention what Isaac was talking about. So if you now are rent homes, or if you are a landlord, you are no longer going to be able to replace a light switch or plug in. You're going to have to hire a licensed someone to do that. So that's simple things that you can do. You can't replace, you might not be able to replace a ballast. So turn the electricity off, do it, and then, you know, we're not talking about rewiring a whole home. We're just talking about a simple little thing. So, and that increased cost is what we're getting at.
Thank you. In respect of everyone's time, we will end the questions here. We will now hear.
Is there, I mean, I've got a little bit, how
Okay.
many do we have? If we have a couple, I'd hate to cut them off. We've just got a couple minutes.
Sure.
Okay, my name is Jim Gerwing, and I live in Pierce. And actually, I did not come here with a pre-planned issue at all, but I heard something that sparked my interest and bothered me a little bit. And that was the one of you called the nitrate issue of boogeyman, or making a boogeyman out of that. And actually, I can go back. I went to school at the university back in the 1970s, and I did a thesis on nitrate leaching and issues up at Staples here. And that was when the issue was just first coming up. And since that time, I went on and did a lot of research on nitrate issues and nitrate leaching. And it is clearly a huge issue. It is not a boogeyman or implying that it's not an important issue. Just Agram Township, just not outside of Pierce, has got huge nitrate issues. And of course, you can always argue what should be the right value to say that it's too high. But that's almost beside the point, since many of the rural wells there, if not most of them, are 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times what the code limit is. And so we're way beyond that already. And not doing anything about it is just basically pushing that issue down the road for our children. Once it's in the groundwater, there's no correcting it anymore. And so I guess the question I'd have, would you be happy drinking water that's 3 or 4 times that? In addition, many of those people in Agram Township have reverse osmosis systems and now to take it out. And yes, that's certainly a possibility, and that works. However, it's costing them several $100s a year to correct someone else's issue, so to speak. And I guess I just would like you to address that issue, not specifically right now necessarily, but long-term. This is a long-term issue. This is not an issue that can be corrected over time and prevented from getting worse over time. Thank you.
I'll try to answer quickly, I guess, but it is complicated. I'm not saying that we don't care about the issue, but Minnesota Department of Health, I also sit on the water board. It's a subcommittee, and they're saying, 10 parts per million is what they're saying we need to get at or below. Now, I don't know if people know or not, my wife is a physician, so I started doing research into this 3 or 4 months ago, looking at what might be an allowable amount of nitrates in water. So if you go back, I'm gonna have to teach you a history lesson if you want to learn about nitrates, and maybe it won't be quick, but if you go back to the 1940s and 50s, there were high nitrates in water. There's blue baby syndrome. University of Minnesota was looking into this, what was going on. We figured out that they were drinking water that had high nitrates, and when we say high, we're not talking 10 parts per million or 50 parts per million, 300 to 500 parts per million, and it was wells that needed to be reconstructed. So when the wells were reconstructed and we kept the water from coming in, then that fixed the problem. So if there are wells that need to be fixed, they do need to be fixed. There is an issue. I'm not saying it's not an issue, but once we fixed that issue, that went away. We haven't had blue baby syndrome in Minnesota as a problem for 70 years. They don't even teach it in medical school. I looked back to like 1980. There's like nobody's dying from nitrates. No kids are getting sick from it. If you have like nitrate poisoning, it's just drinking fresh water. So no, we don't want people drinking water with high nitrates, but farmers are doing best management practices, and a lot of the best management practices that the state uses came from farming. We're putting nitrates on in the spring now, so it's getting sucked up into the plants rather than going down to the water. And nitrates can last a long time. The water moves and it's all connected and it can move out. So we're not ignoring the issue. It is an issue. But when I said boogeyman, they're trying to make it seem worse than it is, and they're attacking things, and it's not as bad as it is. So I'm going to tell you about a study from, I think, Switzerland. So there was 1 million pregnant mothers, and they looked at the amount of nitrates in the water. From basically 0 to 25, there was no increase in birth defects. From 1 million pregnancies, so 0 to 25, there's no increase in the amount of birth defects. So really 25 is a 0. So, you know, right now the state of Minnesota is 10. The World Health Organization sets it at 50. But as adults, we could drink that, and it's not going to hurt us. We're not. Someone brought up to me, well, colorectal cancer is being caused by too high of nitrates. My wife looked into that. There's someone who thinks that, but they can't prove it, and it's not a proven thing. So, you know, we're using one question by one person. We can't say that. So yes, do we want to not use too much nitrates in our farms? Obviously, anyone who's a farmer here knows that they don't want to put too much nitrates on their land, and you only want to put a pound if a pound is what it takes, because it costs money, and you're losing money. And we have buffer strips to keep these things in. You know, we have some soils that are sandy, like we do in Morrison County, where these things can get into the ground quicker. So we have to realize that we don't want to over fertilize, but we also have to feed people. And, you know, so we have to find that balance. Now, with the well issue, it is an issue. And so if you want to talk to me about Agram Township, we can talk about this. But, you know, wells do need to get fixed if that's where the water, if they're not up to code, you might have nitrates coming in. But I actually asked the Department of Health, the commissioner, because they actually made some false statements. So I asked them to retract their statements, and they said they would not. And I brought them the proof and the science. And what they said in Water Committee was a lie. So now the Minnesota Department of Health is lying to people about this issue, and that frustrates me. And I came to them. I just told you some of the science. I keep going on and on and on, but I don't want to waste your time. I'm sorry. But, you know, so yes, we need to be cognizant of the issue, but it's not as bad as they're leading us saying it is. Thank you.
And I also sit on that legislative subcommittee on water policy. And so we've been dealing with the nitrate issue quite significantly, especially for southeastern Minnesota. I'm not going to repeat everything that he said, but I'll just say this. 2 Fridays ago, when I was at the Royalton American Legion and was sitting down with someone who's my same age, and they're running a multi-generational family farm just outside of Royalton, it was hilarious, and I loved it. This is a family I've known for a long time, and the son is competing with his father on exactly they're building their own farm plan for the year, and they basically made a bet between the two of them who is going to economically who's going to make more money or more profit based upon the management practices on their land. And so the son, he was choosing to have more cover crops and to use that management practice, and his dad wasn't. And the son, at the end of the year, beat his father in the economics around cover crops used with agriculture. So my point in saying that is, every single year, science and technology and understanding gets better on the way that we manage our land. And in this instance, I think that that's super cool. The solution is coming right from family farmers, understanding the economics of their own farm and how we can provide for the food security of our community, state, and country. And so a lot of the things as it relates to nitrates have been, for lack of a better term, sins of the past. Things that have happened decades ago when we didn't have the science, technology, and best practices. And if we just lean into the tools that are in the toolbox today, our family farmers are going to thrive, our communities are going to thrive, and we're going to have high water quality. We all care about that. We all care about clean water, whether it's our own drinking water, whether it's the Mississippi River, whether it's our incredible lakes in Morrison County. We need to celebrate our clean water and talk about why it's best here. And just best management practices and educating people will make our community even stronger. So thank you.
Any other public comment? I would like to make sure that if there's anything else from the public, we hear it now. Because we could probably talk all day. And I don't necessarily want to hear that. No offense, guys, but I want to make sure that the public had their concerns brought up. Because I'm sure every one of us is up here taking notes. But is there anything else from the public?
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. My name is Jessica. I live in the city of Little Falls.
Speak up a little bit, can't hear you.
Sorry, my name is Jessica. I live in the city of Little Falls.
Is there a switch there?
Okay, I'll just try to talk louder. About a week ago, I went to a presentation from a family that attended the J6 protest. And, you know, two of them are facing like pretty significant charges against them. And based on their story, I mean, basically one of them was outside of the Capitol building. He was trying to protect a woman that had been trampled on by, there was just a police shield on the ground. He was holding it up because the police were shooting out mace, pepper spray out into the crowd from like this hallway. And there was a woman that had been trampled, and so she was injured. And so he had been, in the military, he had been a medevac, so he was just trying to shield her from the pepper spray coming out so that someone was doing CPR on her and all that. So he's being charged with all kinds of felonies based on his use of trying to use this shield. They were saying that he was using it, assaulting, etc. They're just bogus charges. And that's a Minnesotan, actually. So I just wanted to point out that the word insurrection is a legal term, and under federal law, it's a crime to incite or engage in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the U.S. or its laws. Black's Law Dictionary defines insurrection as a violent revolt against oppressive authority based upon organization of an armed uprising, and is to be distinguished from a mob or a riot. Mobs and riots can involve unlawful and violent acts, but they aren't necessarily insurrections. And a revolt is an act to overthrow the government. Insurrection therefore requires an organized group that plans an attack to overthrow the government. So during the past 3 years, the FBI investigation into J6 has yielded extremely little evidence of an armed, coordinated, organized attack on the Capitol that day. 95% of the participants, they were unarmed and they were acting individually on their own accord. Most of the J6 participants that have been prosecuted, the majority have just been prosecuted with trespassing. So none said that they were entering the Capitol building was something that they had planned or organized to do. And a lot of the video footage that's been released, it just shows people walking in a single file line into the Capitol, past police officers, and most of them just exited when they left, when they were done, without, having to be escorted or told to leave. So in comparison to the catastrophic riots during the summer of 2020, that caused 18 deaths, over $1 billion in damage, including federal and state buildings, including a Minnesota Police Department that was set on fire while officers were still inside, and then it was burned to the ground. Even sovereign nations were declared in some cities. Compared to that, the J6 caused $1.5 million in damage, and only one gunshot was fired that day, and that was by a Capitol police officer who shot and killed an unarmed woman. Her name was Ashley Babbitt. 3 other unarmed protesters also died that day for other reasons. So my question, I guess, would be, are you guys aware of, people facing these charges? What are your thoughts on that? And also, there was a bill passed after January 6th in Minnesota, which specifically states, whereas on January 6, 2021, an armed mob breached the United States Capitol, endangering the safety and members of Congress, law enforcement, and staff. And whereas a mob damaged property in the United States Capitol and forced members of Congress to evacuate, many wearing gas masks. I don't recall seeing anybody wearing gas masks. But anyway, this bill, Representative Prisha voted to pass this bill. And I'm just wondering, do you regret your decision voting yes on that, and why? Given the light of you passing.
I don't support violence in any form. Violence is violence, and if it, I just don't support it. I think we can make better choices about how we raise our concerns and so forth. So I've seen way too much violence, and I've seen too much destruction, and I just don't support it.
Very, very familiar with what the family there is dealing with, and I think this is a symptom of a larger problem. And a lot of time this comes to the weaponization, the political weaponization of departments. And we're seeing this more and more, where a political opponent can be attacked, targeted by departments in order to gain political points to influence stuff. And there was a lot of things that happened, obviously, on January 6th. And a lot of times what happens is the truth doesn't necessarily come out until well after. And it is easy to have a knee-jerk reaction to some of these things. Nobody wants to see our government attacked, our capital attacked. But then again, we look at history, and this has happened many times in the past as well. So it is up to the citizens to get involved, to work through the process with their grievances. The destruction at the Capitol was wrong. There's some really interesting videos out there. One of them is the timeline, which was extremely educational on January 6th. And I spent time watching that and come to the realization too that, what was necessarily, or what was portrayed in the media wasn't necessarily accurate. So there's a lot of those things that you find out later once you educate yourself. What we thought what was going on might not necessarily been the truth. And we see a lot of times the media frame some of these issues. Not all the media, of course, but it's interesting once you do your homework. So Mark Twain says that, I don't know, am I going to get the 1 minute? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Mark Twain says history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure rhymes. And we've seen this. You look back at the Civil War and some of the issues that we had there. There were the government-controlled media. That was a very huge issue during that time period where Lincoln restricted some of the media. And we see this ebb and flow in politics. And that's the dangerous situation, and I think Ron mentioned it earlier about picking winners and losers. So if we don't study that history, we are doomed to repeat it. We need to learn those lessons. We need to be cognizant of what happened, what's going on. The term insurrection, when that was originally thrown out, first thing I did is Google it. There was a reason insurrection was used. And when that happened, what I first thought and looked at was, it wasn't necessarily what was important as how it started, it was how it ended. And that was my question, because January 6th, I was working. And so the next day I said, define insurrection, because somebody called and said, what do you think, Mike? I said, look it up, what's an insurrection? Armed overthrow of government, is that what happened? And then when you say that these things happened for this and this reason, how did it end? When the people, for the most part, were not physically driven out of the Capitol, but voluntarily just, it kind of lost its steam and they left. And I think that speaks more about January 6th was how it ended than how it started. I don't condone the violence in any way, shape, or form. It's absolutely tragic to see our government buildings, you know, windows smashed, things destroyed. It happened January 6th. It happened at the George Floyd riots, when the precinct there was given up. It happened afterwards in Seattle when government buildings there were absolutely destroyed. But there again, when we look at the media and we say, okay, we're going to villainize one group and not villainize another, and that's the picking and winners and losers that is so dangerous. We're going to prop up a media or a situation in the Metro where we have a reporter standing there in front of a burning building and saying this is a mostly peaceful protest. That's not accurate. So I've had some very thorough and in-depth conversations with the Star and Tribune on some of their articles. And I do believe they need to do a better job of reporting those issues. So that's my thoughts. Oh, the other thing, I'll just say this, is the law. We have an amazing justice system, and it's presumed innocence. You are innocent until proven guilty. That separates us from a lot of countries, especially a lot of third world countries. If you are accused of a crime, it is the responsibility to prove that you committed that crime. You are innocent until proven guilty, and that gives us the freedoms in our country. And so when we hear so many people that are charged with this insurrection and automatically convicted in the court of public opinion, that is a dangerous situation as well. And that applies not just to January 6th, but to the Metro, the riots that happened there as well. Not all the rioters were bad. But we live in an amazing country. We don't spend enough time studying our history, and I am afraid that if we don't spend more time on it, we will be doomed to repeat it. I love Paul Harvey, and I tell people all the time, listen to Freedom of Chains, 1965. That 10-minute history lesson is amazing, and how it applies to human nature and human development over thousands of years, from the Greeks, Romans, through China, Persia, and are we heading down the same path? I think that if we don't spend enough time, like I said, studying our history, we will end up being another civilization in the dustbin of history, and I don't want to see that. I don't know. Is that my closing comment? I guess I was replying to that. If we want to wrap it up, that's fine too.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. We will hear closing comments from our representatives and senator.
You want me to start? I just felt like a monologue for a while.
You got 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I can't get it all in 30 seconds. To a couple things, resolutions. We've seen a lot of this lately, and to me, I think that is vital, because that is local control. We saw resolutions from many different counties. We saw letters when it came up to the handgun or the safe storage, Second Amendment bills from our sheriffs in different areas. And that to me shows the voice of the people, which is so important in our republic. So I compliment the counties, the cities, the sheriffs that did that. When it comes to local control and picking winners and losers, education, I think, is a prime example. If you ever get the opportunity to go down to Walnut Grove, Little House on the Prairie books, the history there, what our education system started at here and where it is now, is there that growth of bureaucracy, which there again is really dangerous. The Little Red schoolhouses, look at that history. If you get the opportunity, go to your township and look at their history books and what they did locally, they wanted local control. And that was about the same time as what was happening in Europe, okay? They said, we want to have control of our education rather than a bureaucracy and a government control in a different part because of what happened in Nazi Germany And when government controlled that and how the ebb and flow of power can dictate some of these things, I am all in favor of local control when it comes to education. Weaponization of government, I hit a little bit, but I do want to thank the people for, putting us into office. We're not always going to agree on everything. We're going to have some discussions. Sometimes they're going to get heated, and I'm okay with that, but it is an absolute honor to serve the people of this area. Something I never thought I would do, never imagined I would do. Don't necessarily like going down to the Capitol and dealing with those situations all the time, but I love coming home and working for the people that have elected us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. That's kind of what I said, or not, that is what I said, when we were talking about the flag on Tuesday. I finished with, you elected me to represent you, tell me what, I need to do. We're here to serve you. So, and, there's things like the flag. It wasn't a thing I ran on. It wasn't an issue, but you came to me and said that you care about it. So we talked about that. And that's what I want to do. I want to listen to what your concerns are, and we need to talk through things. Maybe, I'm not, this is no way to say anything you're wrong or anything, but like with the nitrate issue, just more information, like Isaac said, to educate people and educate people about what's going on. I'm coming to you with information I have studies, and that's what I am. I'm a wildlife biologist, so I do the science, and I don't say it until I can prove it, and I can say we did it again. It's repeatable. So, so when I come to you with that information, I'm pretty sure that it's right. It's not a philosophy. I'm actually saying this is something that was done. It wasn't just this is what I think. It's actually solid concrete. And there are a few things that were mentioned. I wanted to, I think Isaac brought up fentanyl. I have a bill. Like last year, they passed a bill to increase the penalties on fentanyl, but they didn't decrease the amount it takes to get the penalty. And they're increasing penalties when they're not even arresting people for fentanyl anyway. So I do have a bill too. 1 minute. There we go. So I just have a bill to try to fight that, so making it easier to get people convicted for having fentanyl. We need to have that. It has to be at 0, but so I'm lowering the amount of that. I got to defend the GUARD Act. That would say we haven't done this in decades. To go to war, it takes an act of Congress, but we don't do that. We just send people across seas, and I have bipartisan support on this bill. Well, nationwide we do. I'm talking to some members in the Senate right now that like it, so I don't know if it's going to pass, but it needs to take it takes an act of Congress to go to war, and if we want to stop fighting, that's what we need to do. We need to say, is this a conflict that we need to be in? And let's vote on it and not just be sending people off to die for no reason. Isaac mentioned wolves. I've got a wolf bill that, if it would pass, we could start having a wolf season this fall, and that's what we need to do. And I don't want to get rid of wolves. They're natural, but they are an issue, and farmers have been dealing with this for a long time. There's a very little amount of money that farmers are paid back when they lose cattle to wolf depredation. I think last year's around $100,000 set aside. That's split between wolves and elk in northern Minnesota, and we've got 5,000 wolves and only $100,000 to give back to farmers. Doing research, I found that California has about 100 wolves, and they set aside $3 million, and that go through that money like that. So we have 5,000 wolves, and we set aside $100,000, and cattle farmers are getting driven out of the state. I talked to the Cattlemen's Association. They said in the last 20 years, we've probably lost 200 cattle farmers in Minnesota because of wolves. They either quit farming or they left the state. So I put forward a bill to ask for $10 million for cattle farmers, because the point of my bill is to say we need to start managing wolves, because we're not going to get the money, but we need to force someone to do something, right? So we need to do that. We need to help farmers. Our deer herd, obviously everyone likes to shoot deer, but then I'll finish with, I put forward legislation that would end the governor's emergency powers. So what the governor did is he kept declaring an emergency over and over and over again. That needs to be voted on by the House and the Senate, and a two-thirds majority to pass that. When the governor was given emergency powers back when there wasn't technology, it might take a week or a week and a half for a letter to get from St. Paul to northern Minnesota, and another week to get back down. So they need some little bit of time to do something. Well, now we have these things, cell phones. something happened, everybody get to the Capitol now, or maybe you can be on a text and say, yep, we'll do that, we'll decide. So they can never do that again, because that shut down businesses, that hurt families, that killed people, and not one person should have that much power and authority over everybody. So that's what this bill would do, and it takes 2/3, so it's going to take people on both sides to say, yes, the governor can do this, and we need to do that, because it's important to people that not one person acts as a dictator over your lives. So that's what this would do, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here and listen to us, and I look forward to serving you more. Thank you.
Thank you again, everybody, for being here. Thank you to Purva, to all of the chamber staff, and everybody who chose to spend part of their Friday morning with us here and to hear your input. I would just ask, and I know I make this request of you often, probably anytime you hear me speak, or even when I'm on the radio or into the newspaper. While we are your voice formally in the votes that we get to cast, your votes are incredibly important. Your voice is incredibly important in the legislative session, and even when you're frustrated, and rightfully so, when you're upset about what is happening inside the halls of the state capitol. Number one, you can reach out to any one of us. We're accessible by any means. And I cannot understate how important your voice is, whether you're making phone calls or writing emails, especially to certain Democratic lawmakers who are trying to erode your constitutional rights. The rights to the Second Amendment, to keep our homes and our families safe, and so much more. The result of this irresponsible DFL trifecta is going to have lingering impacts for a long time. So please partner with us, lock arms, to stop as much of this radical agenda as absolutely possible during these next few months, and then ensure that everyone in our community gets out to vote this fall. Every single person in our community. There's no excuse not to vote, and we have to have that to change course and put our community first. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you to my colleagues, and thank you to the chamber and everyone. Just quickly, thank you for what you do as I look across. I know many of you, and I know the roles you have. I'll just say this, when I've served in both the majority and the minority, and when you're in the majority, you get to set the agenda, and you get to push things that are very important to your community. When you're in the minority, you're scraping for anything you can. And we've been in the minority for 6 years, and I'm not okay with just letting our community sit back and take what we're given. So with that, please keep communicating with all of us. And I love the dialogue, and you're not going to offend me. I have a strong faith, and I have a family that they like me. I don't need any more friends, so we can just talk.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you to the City of Little Falls for allowing us to have this in the council chambers, and to River Stump for filming this. Make sure you contact them to get your concerns and issues across. They cannot help us if they don't know what impacts us. Thank you.